recording whenever you want to make it happen.
Okay, we're glad to welcome Gregg Collins, one of the most successful coaches in the history of basketball here in the Mansfield area. He was the head coach of Lex for 7 years and then took 4 years off and came back and coached the Mansfield Tiger for 12 seasons. And Coach Collins has recently been inducted as a member of the Ohio High School Basketball Coaches Hall of Fame, a well-deserved honors. So as we've done interviews with coaches on this show, I think one of the interesting things for our viewers is to hear about a coach's journey. So like how you got started in the interest of being a basketball coach to, all those years and finally ending at senior high, ending your coaching career at senior high.
Well, Joe, first and foremost, thanks for having me and thanks for doing what you did to get me inducted into the Hall of Fame. I really appreciate it. It's an honor. What I felt was pressure was my first year of coaching basketball out of college, and that was an 8th grade basketball coach. It was Johnny Feasel, Johnny Jr., but his dad was the head coach of the varsity, and Johnny Feasel Jr. was on the team, but they were undefeated as 7th graders. So here I have them as 8th graders, an undefeated group.
Coach's son.
And a coach's son, exactly. And I went through the year and showed them how to be graceful losers a couple of times. And so they learned that from me, I guess, at that time. But, I started off in coaching junior high basketball and at Olentangy High School back when it was just one school. And then John Feasel Senior took the head coaching job down at Groveport, Madison, and asked me to come down as an assistant. And I did. And, boy, those were great years for me. Actually, it was only 2 before I got the Lexington job. But I'll tell you, I really I'm not sure if you started in the junior highs as a coach, but I really think that helped me. Like anybody getting out of college, I thought I knew it all. I was ready. Actually, when I interviewed at Olentangy, they offered me the 8th grade basketball job or the head girls basketball job. And, I was thinking, what the heck? I'm ready. I'm ready to be a head coach. But fortunately, I came to my senses and took the junior high coaching job with the boys and went through that process as junior high coach for, I think, 1 or 2 years, freshman coach for a year, and then as a varsity assistant for a couple of years. And to me, that was so valuable.
Yeah, I started as a JV coach at Fort Loramie, and I was the same way. I'd been a student assistant at Ohio Northern under Gail Doherty and Joe Chiapoli, and I came out kind of thinking, "Hey, man, I'm ready." But you soon realized that you were not ready at all.
Oh, exactly.
So you became the head coach at Lex in 1985, and it's the same year that I became a head coach at Ontario. Yep. Had a record of 129 wins, 42 losses. You won 3 district championships, 2 regional championships, and were state champions in 1989 and 91. So I guess it's always interesting, too, for our audience to maybe talk a little bit about those tournament runs and maybe some of the players you had. So let's talk about a little bit about that tournament run in 1989.
Well, it was such a great team, and you remember so many of those kids, but it was a senior-dominated team. They were a very close-knit team, and we had 3 1,000-point scorers. Yep. You don't have that very often, but Tommy Scholl, Jeff Hebner, Don Ristilli were all people that could put the basketball in the hoop. That was not a question at all. My job was just to make sure we played a little bit of defense so we could score more points than the opposition. And one valuable piece that we picked up was an assistant coach named Tom Foster.
Yep.
I was in my, I think, 4th year as the head coach ever, 4th year at Lexington. Really the 3rd year with these seniors. They started for me as sophomores before, but I knew I needed a veteran, someone that could tell me, Gregg, no, that's not going to work. Tell me what I should be doing, and not after the fact, but before the fact. And Tom Foster, as you know, yep, had great success down at Fredericktown, and I called Tom, and I don't know how I was able to get him, but he was able to make that drive up every day to Lexington, and he was so valuable to the players, but more valuable to me as a head coach, being a sounding board. And you know how important assistant coaches are, especially at that time. I needed a veteran assistant coach. And he worked with the perimeter players, which just happened to be, Don Ristilli, Tommy Scholl, and I guess Jeff Hebner was kind of both ways, and maybe I would grab Jeff a little bit and bring him down into the post, work with me. But, those three guys were certainly the cornerstone, but Jason Dials, Brian Thompson, Mike McGuire, Chris Hahn, people might know him as Johnny Paradise here in the area.
I just saw him like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, is that right?
I forget, we were in a store or something, and I ran across him.
Oh, I see him all the time at the Y. Just he was from a great family. He's from a great, great family. His mom and dad were just super. But anyway, those guys were all so close. And the key, even though they played other sports, they put time in the gym. They liked to play. And that was back in the days when we didn't have, an August where you had to close the gym down or, limit your basketball. Those guys would be going to soccer practice and then come in and play open gym. Some were golfers, a couple were football players, but they just liked to play basketball, and they knew they had a special group. They knew they wanted to be good, and it helped that Tommy Scholl at his house had an indoor basketball court. That didn't hurt, and Tommy, whose son right now, Carson, plays down at Olentangy. Big Walnut now. He's down at Big Walnut. Saw him play a couple weeks ago. Is just like Tommy. He's got to get up 200, 300, 400 shots every day. Matter of fact, when I went down before an 8th grade game to watch Carson play, he'd already been to the shoot-away gym to shoot. He came in for the game, and then after the game, we went back to the shoot-away so he can get up another couple of hundred shots. The kid's just like Tommy. But it was a special group, and, we had some challenges along the way, and as Bob Haas the great Bob Haas, before he passed, would remind me quite often, Greg, do you know who beat you that year? And he was right. It was Willard. Beat us over at Willard in a great basketball game and in a great environment, and that probably got us ready for the tournament more than most games.
You bring up Tom Scholl. My son Blake's coaching at Worthing Kilbourne.
Right.
So there was a Saturday that he had to go Christmas with his wife Ashley, and I just called and I said, "Well, was anybody scouting?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Well, you want me to scout?" He goes, "Well, if you want to go, go." And it was Big Walnut playing New Albany. So when I sat down, I got up there, sat down, I was right behind Tom Scholl, and I was like, "That's Tom Scholl." So I said something. So we started talking. Of course, we brought your name up. He goes, "I was scared of that man for 4 years." he goes, and it's so odd to like talk to him now.
I can't wait to see him.
But then you had another run in 91, which those runs are always a little bit different. I mean, you had a senior-dominated team, and I think the team in 91 was a little bit different than the team in 89.
It was a combination of junior and seniors. Jamie Fikes' group, obviously, and Jamie and Brian Lesh and Scott Cooper and Ryan Fesmeyer were juniors, but you had the Brian Leshes and Matt Burns and Matt Schulers that were seniors that, they got along so well. And as they would say, a couple of those seniors dressed on the 89 team. They didn't get to play, but they would dress. Maybe they got in the last few minutes actually they got in the last few minutes of a state championship game. But they said, we felt like members of the team, but we didn't feel like we really did anything to win that state championship. So that is what motivated them to want to get back to Columbus, and not just get back there, but to do something when we get down there. And again, close-knit group that spent a lot of time in the gym. I think of Buck Morton and Matt Schuler were two outstanding soccer players. And they would come from a soccer game into the gym in August for open gym. They just wanted to run. And of course,
Yep.
as you did, I'm sure we would have alumni back that, wanted to thump on the underclassmen. It was so good to have those two guys come in the gym and, really probably get beat up a little bit by some older guys after they just got off the soccer field. But close-knit group that just loved to play and would do, anything the coach asked them to do.
So even the next year, though, Jamie's senior year, you guys, I think, got to the regional finals?
No,
or district
well,
finals.
Lexington
'Cause
decided.
You went to D1, right?
Yes, Lexington decided to take in a certain group of students around the county that instead of having, and I don't know what SBH, I'm not exact, I don't know, don't hold me to that, but there was, a certain amount of kids at each school, and Lex decided to take them in, which we all thought was a great idea until I found out that moved us up to Division I.
Yep.
So, now we have a really good squad, and we're D1, and we're ranked, I think, 4th or 5th in the state. But we end up getting beat in the district by Findlay, and that's the year I think Lima Senior. I don't know. I know Lima Senior won the district. They were quite good. That might have been Lyles and.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
And then, that might have been the year. Would that have been the year like Findlay had Lamont Paris?
Yeah, Lamont played on that team.
Because that was Jerry Snodgrass, I think, would have been the
Exactly.
head coach,
And
yes.
Jerry, Jerry
Yep.
just did a great job. But, Lamont Paris was on that. They were a very good basketball team. And every time I turn on SEC basketball, like last night, I turn on Kentucky to watch South Carolina.
Yep, that he was.
There's Lamont Paris coaching South Carolina, and it brings back bad memories. I was going into the game rooting for South Carolina, but then I had to root for Kentucky.
Well, so you get out of coaching. Was it after that season you got out of the coaching?
Yeah, I got out of that after that season, and
So I guess maybe if you would elaborate a little bit on maybe the reasons why you got out, because you won it in '89, won it in '91, had a good team in '92. Was it just?
And we had a good junior high group coming up. John Sanderson,
Yep.
who went on to play Ohio State,
And then Ohio. Yeah.
and then Ohio is just an outstanding player. And his son is the
big
number
time
one sophomore.
Yeah.
I watched him last summer. He's quite a player. And then over here at Ontario, Jerry Moten, who Jerry was in Lex Junior High at the time.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So it was not easy leaving, but I don't know if you've gotten to it, but they use the word burnout, and I don't know if that's it or not, but I knew I was burned out, and I also, Jamie was going to Michigan State. I also wanted to follow Jamie. So it was a good time to step away and, head up to Michigan State and watch their basketball games. And, there were a few times where I went up, and his first year, Tom Izzo was an assistant coach, and I would just stay at Tom's house and for a week and just go to practice and watch. And it was just,
Wow.
it was, it's so much fun. But then after 4 years, you got the hunger back again. It's like, hey.
That's the thing with retiring now. I get to go watch practices, and I wish sometimes that maybe like you, if you would have taken a couple years off and just got to go watch people practice, because it's a whole different experience. But
Right.
But you kind of jumped in that after 4 years, you kind of got the hunger back, and you were offered the job at senior high.
Well, I was willing to go anywhere, but the wife and the kids, the kids were here in the area and younger at the time, and I guess they were probably elementary, middle school, and my wife, this is the first time she'd ever really been anywhere for 9, 10 years, because when she was growing up, her parents moved quite a bit. So it was really limited to this area, and what better job than Mansfield Senior. And I fortunately applied for it, and fortunately they overlooked 4 years out of basketball and said, "Hey, come on aboard."
But you take two teams to the Final Four in 12 years there, in 99 and 2005, and and in both years you lose to the eventual state champion. One year you lose to powerhouse Cincinnati Moeller, and then the 2005 you lose to Canton McKinley, who at that time was kind of a powerhouse too.
Right. Right.
Talk a little bit about those two teams and those tournament runs, because you might be able to name some players that you had to go against in those runs.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and I grew up and still am a big Notre Dame fan. And Cincinnati Moeller had, I think it was Monez, something like that was going to Notre Dame. They had Sylvester that played at Ohio State. Remember him hitting the big shot against Illinois. And Carl Kramer's such a great guy, the head coach at Moeller, just a good person. But when I see him, and I'll see him at the Hall of Fame banquet.
You guys are going in the same class.
I've got to, say how happy I am that I was there for his first state championship, and to experience it. But, and I don't know if you had, all your teams were good teams. You had some great teams. Mm-hmm. I don't know what separated them. To me, though, for mine, again, it was a group that was close-knit. Marquise Sykes, who's doing a great job at Mansfield Senior right now, I mean, he's great for the kids, was the leader of the group. And his parents were kind of the mom and dad of the group. Eva Sykes, the mom, was just a great lady, and she just got like mother hen of everybody on the team. And she was just outstanding. And unfortunately, the day before the Moeller game, actually the night before the Moeller game, she gets an aneurysm and doesn't come out of it. And it was just devastating for the family, for all of us, but certainly for Marquise and his brother Maurice. But it was a close-knit group. It was a senior-laden group also that didn't have any back-to-the-basket players. We didn't have any Jamie Fike, but we had 5 guys that could face up. Not all of them were perimeter shooters, but they knew what their role was. And, besides spending a lot of time in the gym, and we always said that, summertime is a time for you to change your role. Yep. Summertime is a time for you to improve. We want to really work on skill development, individual skill development. It's great if you play outside of our team, so you can change your role a little bit. Maybe if you play with us all the time, Marquise Sykes is always going to handle the ball. But we want you to play AAU, play whatever, so you handle the ball. And when it comes to the winter, we'll put limitations, what we think. And these kids, they accepted their roles. They just fit in together. I mean, one of the truly groups that when one person was doing well, the other people were happy for him. And that just made for a special run. And, I don't know if that was the year we played, I think, St. Ignatius in the regional finals, but, that was maybe one of the better games I can remember our kids playing. And we just got so hot. Everybody was just dribbling past their man for layups, or Marquise was hitting a 3, or Desan Hilliard was hitting a 3. And, I'm such a smart coach, Ricky Menard, who 5 years later would get drafted in the NBA, was coming off the bench, but he was only a junior. So,
that's right.
You can't start.
They got to earn it, man.
Yeah,
they got to earn it.
Yeah.
Well, you bring up, you mentioned some names of great players: Jamie Fike, Ricky Menard, Marquise Sykes, and Rastelli, Scholl, Hepner. You talked about the teams, those teams that were good with was that bonding that they had.
Right.
But like a Jamie Fike, a Ricky Menard, what kind of separated those players from, you've had good players. Those guys were great players.
Right.
What kind of, as you looked at them, what kind of separated those guys as being different than other players that you've coached?
Well, Ricky, I think more than Jamie, Ricky, anytime he was on the court, felt he was the best basketball player on the court. And, his confidence, it just was outstanding, and it would rub off on the other players. Ricky always wanted a challenge. If we were putting together a summer schedule of playing teams, you know, he goes, well, hey, you know, Kent McKinley's good. Let's make sure we get to Kent McKinley. Let's make sure we get up there. And then he would play AAU. And, you know, his habits were just outstanding. And he also, you know, as you said about reference, Tommy Scholl scared me for 4 years. And, you know, I hope he's exaggerating a little bit on that. You know, Ricky was so comfortable in his own skin that you could yell at Ricky, you could tell Ricky to do something, and Ricky would accept it and, you know, and just try to do it, but it wouldn't affect him. Like, I'm not taking that personal, you know. He's an old man. He's not out here doing it. I'm going to do what I can do, and I'm going to work hard. With Jamie, I don't know if you remember him as a sophomore. As a sophomore, he came off the bench for us, and that was a year after, I think it was 1990, a year that you guys came in and beat us at Lexington.
On a 5-second call, you're probably still.
I know Brian Sprengler was the referee. Brian Lesh still says, I was calling timeout, but you know, and I was glad to be there for your start of your run too that year. So that was a thrill. But you know, Jamie just progressed each year. He didn't play anything but basketball. Really, you know, when people ask about Jamie Fike growing up, I say, well, the community just did a great job with Jamie Fike. We had an older couple.
You know Don Cooper, Scott, and his dad, and I golf with Cooper a bit. And he goes, "That kid lived at my house."
Oh, exactly.
He said,
Yeah.
He was there all the time.
Oh yeah. And then we had an older couple, and they were big Lexington fans. That he would go over and just, you know, have dinner at their house. They would just have him over, and that was, everybody helped raise Jamie. And
I think he went to Ontario till he was like in 6th grade, I believe.
Then he saw the light.
Yeah.
And then,
I wasn't smart enough to get over there.
You chased him out, huh?
And start bringing him to my house. So.
Well, I mean, look at me. I brought him off the bench as a sophomore, and he was just a little scrawny kid, and, you know, shooting from the outside. And lo and behold, by his senior year, he's a big, strong young man.
Well, you know, you mentioned a couple players, but people may not realize this, that you were also, you mentioned a guy's name earlier, Bob Kortson, that you got involved with him, and you had an opportunity for, I believe, 5 years or so that you took high school teams in the spring to Italy for like a tournament. And
did again last year.
You did it again last
year.
But you had an opportunity to coach LeBron James.
Yeah. Oh,
so maybe talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm glad Bobby's not here, because he would have some stories also, because truth be told, I brought LeBron James off the bench.
I think I do remember that story.
And, you know, because he was an underclassman, and we had, I think, seniors that, you know, they were all these kids were going D1.
Again, like Chris Quinn that went
Quinn at, you know,
Notre Dame,
and played for the Cavs, played for the Miami Heat, and now is Spoelstra's assistant with the Miami Heat. I was hoping he would come back to Notre Dame to coach, but Chris was part of that team. But all of them were Division I players, and Bobby Kortson was wining and dining them, and we had a great time. And LeBron was an underclassman, so I just felt, you know, it was right to bring LeBron off the bench. And every year Bobby Kortson would make fun of me, and some other people on the trip would make fun of me. But then, about 2 Olympics ago, well, no, it must have been more than that. It was one of LeBron's first Olympics. He came off the bench. And I said, yeah, there's another coach that knows what he's doing, you know? But to be honest with you, on that trip, Chris Quinn was offered $1 million contract if he would have stayed. They love Chris Quinn.
To play in Italy.
To play in Italy, exactly. They just love Chris Quinn. You know, again, you look at him and, you know, he doesn't look like a basketball player. But I'm telling you, the kid is He's unbelievable. He was an unbelievable player.
Well, we got to talk, like your coaching, your coaching journey. But I think also for any coaches, young coaches that are watching this, I think it's always interesting for coaches to kind of talk a little bit about their coaching philosophy, or I guess the term they use today is culture, culture that you have. So if you kind of look back on your career, kind of what would you like? What would stand out about a Gregg Collins team? Like, what would that coaching philosophy be?
I would hope that people would look at it and say it was built from the defensive side first when it comes to, the X's and O's. But I remember getting out of college and a fellow student was looking for a coaching job, and he said, I have this notebook already made. I don't know what job I'm going to get, but I know the offense I'm going to run. I know the defense I'm going to run. Here's the press. And I'm thinking, how do you know the kids you're going to have? If I'm at Mansfield Senior or if I'm at Mansfield Christian, I think they're two different type of players. And, you have to attack it differently. So part of my philosophy was, hey, be ready to change. Be ready to adjust. Now, you're going to have some basic rules, and we felt like we could always be a man-to-man team, but that doesn't mean you can't play some zone. Right. You can't play some combination, box, triangle, whatever. But I think you have to start with man. And then offensively, my philosophy always was, if you give me great efforts at the defensive end, I'm going to be a little bit more relaxed on your shot selection at the offensive end. That doesn't mean totally relaxed. And that doesn't mean that you take a shot that I didn't see you take Monday through Thursday in practice. But if it's a shot that I saw you take in practice, whether it's in shooting drills or whether it's in a scrimmage situation of some type, and here you rushed it, you're a little bit off balance, I'll be a little bit more patient if you give me a great effort at the defensive end. And I think the kids understood that. So they oftentimes tried to take advantage at the offensive end. But hey, I'm playing defense. But
that's interesting, because as I got later in my coaching career, one of the things we would have certain shooting drills that we would pretty much do like on a weekly basis,
right.
and we would. What I started doing was posting all those results, and so people were like, how do you have kids identify their role? And a lot of times it was more. When you had your good teams, it was more the guys in the locker room were identifying the roles, because when you saw that chart, they would come and go, Greg, why are you shooting that chart? You're number 10 on this list.
Right.
And I think that kind of paid dividends.
Well, you look all the time and you hear people talk about, well, that's a coach-led team, that's a player-led team. And when I hear player-led team, that's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
I'm not talking, the players aren't running the show, they're not running practice, but if you're doing something that outside your role, outside what you're capable of doing, they're going to let you know.
Well, and I think you'll probably say this about your good teams also, is you didn't have to deal with a lot of the I guess what you would call other issues besides basketball, because the players in the locker room took care of that. I mean, this is a funny story. It was I think it was one year. We got beaten. And at that time, the group was like, there was like a freshman or sophomore. They were just dressing varsity, and I think we were playing Winford, and we just got throttled by them at our place. And I said something like, after the game, I said something like, I told the team, I said, if Brian Maloney was in this locker room, he would have a couple of you guys by the throat against the locker. Well. That summer, we go down to play at Denison, and we stayed overnight. And Coach Tim Hennig was my assistant, and we got back from playing, and I lay down and took a nap, and all of a sudden he comes bouncing in, and I said, "What's up with you?" He goes, "Oh, just give him some history of Ontario basketball." I said, "What?" And one of the kids that ended up was a really good player for us, Nathan Pullum. He asked Coach a question. He goes, "Hey, you remember when Coach said that in the locker room?" He goes, "Would that really have happened?"
Yeah.
And Coach Hennig goes, Well, probably wouldn't have happened when Coach Balogh was in the locker room because it probably would have happened.
And back then, he would have denied that he knew anything about it.
So one of the other things for coaches too, and we talked about this a little bit beforehand, and you mentioned it about the summer, was that you really wanted players to work on skills, and I think the thing that you found too is when you knew in the fall kids that had worked on their game outside of stuff, but I guess for coaches too, if you look back at your practices, like organization of your practices, and you maybe mentioned already a little bit of what you stressed in practice was defense, but maybe give a little bit of a synopsis about how a practice would look if we went and watched a Gregg Collins practice.
Well, we had something which I have to give credit to John Fiesel back when I was his assistant coach at Groveport. He had something called a ritual, and that was the beginning of practice. This is what we're going to do every day. And it was skill development of some type. Well, I only changed it to I had a ritual, but I made it 3 different rituals.
Right, yep.
So we would change it up. So, maybe the same thing. So, every day during skill development, we're going to work on defensive footwork, and we're going to work on some type of one-on-one. But it's not going to be just a matter of throw the ball to Joey and get down and play one-on-one. We're going to, do something, something different. And it's going to be something different each day, whether it comes from the wing, from the point, wherever it might be. But we're going to have a ritual, something we're going to do every day. I think, I assume they still have these coaching clinics that go on, but remember the Nike coaching clinics were just absolutely great. And you go and you listen to these successful coaches talk, and I stole so many things from them that, one was put at the beginning of practice what you want to emphasize, what you believe in. So we wanted to be a defensive team, so we're going to do defense first. And whatever the drills were, you would build up. You wouldn't just go on the court. I think a lot of people think coaching is just a matter of, 3 o'clock practice starts, you throw 5-on-5 out there, and you tell them, don't do that, do that, do that. Well, the late Bob Miller, as you know, I remember him saying once, Greg, it's so much more fun to coach the do's than the don'ts. And so that's why we said, well, we're going to coach the do's at the beginning of practice. Here's what we want to do defensively: 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, and you build up. Same thing offensively, but defensively we would have that early in practice. And between drills, sometimes when you're fatigued, we'll do the shooting drills, whether it's team shooting, an individual shooting of some type, but that is obviously so very important. But one thing I've always believed in, I'd like to hear what your response is. 90% of our drills, we wanted winners and losers. Yep. Yeah, I don't care if it, like you were talking about the shooting drill. I don't care if it's just shooting. We're going to chart it. We're going to have winners and losers, because that's.
And I think that's the thing. I think if I look back at my coaching career from the start, through it, is the more competitive you made practice, the better the practice was, because kids love to compete. And plus, it kind of really showed, you mentioned a kid like Ricky Menard. I'm sure Ricky Menard, he didn't want to lose any of those.
Right, exactly.
Any drill that he was in.
And that makes it tough, especially at, when I was at Lexington and we were keeping maybe 8 guys on the varsity and dressing a few from the JV team. That was tough, because the difference between Jamie Fike and the 8th man was, night and day. So you had to mix and match, and, it was probably impossible to find a drill where Jamie wasn't going to dominate. I can tell you brought up Scott Cooper. Scott Cooper tells me the story that, we would at halftime, when you came into the locker room, one of the assistants.
I've heard this story. I think he told me this story.
The assistant coaches would have how many rebounds each player has. And, Scott Cooper, Fesmar, all these guys had 0. And so I get mad and I start yelling at them. you guys got to start giving us a better effort.
We went. Yeah. I got to tell you this because Scott's very successful. And we got to go to Firestone to golf because he's a member there.
Right.
And so we were sitting around having dinner afterwards and started telling stories, and he's telling this story. So go ahead and finish.
I still think some of these are embellished, but still. But yeah. So he on the way out to the second half, he grabs Jamie Fike and says, "Hey, will you let a few of those slip through your hands?" And because
I remember
the old man is yelling at us.
Collins just screaming at me, and I'm going, "Wait, he's 6'8".
Yeah, he's got 15 rebounds at halftime. Just let a few slip through your hands.
You know what? One other question. Your teams are always so well prepared.
I appreciate that.
So maybe talk a little bit about scouting. And I know scouting now has changed because of huddle, but maybe talk a little bit about scouting. When you were at Lex and at Mansfield Senior, kind of how you incorporated that all into a game plan and those kind of things.
Well, back then, of course, you had to do live scouting and call up a friend and try to get a tape or two of an opponent. And nowadays, everything's on huddle. And I was glad to hear. Went to a Shelby practice a few weeks ago, and Greg, the coach there, played for us at Ashland. And I said, "Well, you doing all your scouting on huddle?" He goes, "Well, yeah, but I like to see teams play once also." I said, "That's great," because I know too many coaches that just want to watch it on film.
Jim Ruckey was on a podcast that our Coaches Association does, and kind of that question was asked, and he kind of said the same thing. And in fact, he goes, I've filled out my calendar here, and he goes, I think I'm going to be able to see 26 games in person this year.
Yeah, exactly.
But because I think there is, and even as I got to the end of my coaching career, I'd be out on a Tuesday night, and somebody would come over, why are you here? And I said,
Right. Oh, hey, and I remember at Mansfield, I'd have scouting trips to Youngstown, up to Cleveland to see opponents play, but
So when people went
it's important.
When you scouted and when people went to scout for you, like, were you more concerned with like the characteristics of a player, or were you more concerned with like what a team was running?
And again, you get some guys that might scout for you that can just come back and say they're playing a 2-3 zone, but we all know that Syracuse's old 2-3 zone is different from a lot of teams' 2-3 zones, so that they're all quite different. But when I'm able to watch them play, first and foremost, I want to know what they're doing offensively. If you can get some calls, that's even better. If they run sets, you have a good idea who their scorers are. You have a good idea going in, where they're scoring from, each player. So you know that. I want to know, unless I have a Jamie Fike inside, I want to know if a guy catches the ball with his back to the basket, is he going to turn to his left shoulder or his right shoulder? Yep. Which way is he going to go? If a guy is a big scorer and he's from the perimeter, is he a drive first, or is he just a spot shooter? All those kind of things are so important. Now, we had an advantage for most of my years that we didn't play a lot of Tuesday games.
Yep.
So, and the conference games would be on Friday, occasionally Saturday, but mostly non-league on Saturday. So you had 4 days to prepare for a team. So one thing I really believed in was we gave the kids a written test on Thursday after practice.
We did that too.
Yeah, we give them a scouting report on Monday. We go over the scouting report, and then in practice we're going to go over, maybe defense, what they do offensively Monday, Tuesday, what they do defensively a little bit Wednesday, Thursday, the player so-and-so, we can't let him go right, so-and-so, we can't let him catch and shoot, whatever it might be. And then we're going to give them a test on Thursday. I remember one test we gave, and it was the player you're going to be guarding. What is your defensive stance going to be when he catches the ball? And Brian Lesh said, "Well, I'm just going to block it." That was his answer on the test. I go, come on, well, that's okay if you do, but I don't know. But I think the preparation is so important.
You mentioned, it used to be kind of the Friday, Saturday thing.
Right.
So if you had Friday, Saturday game, how did you prepare for that game on Saturday through the week? Did you?
Well, it would be different.
It depends on who you play. I'm
right.
Sure, yes.
Right. Obviously, the league opponent was very, very important. Now, when we got to Mansfield Senior, there were some years where we were just so loaded that, and we might be playing St. Vincent St. Mary's on Saturday.
Yep.
The kids weren't really looking forward to Friday. So, it's like, well, I know they're not even thinking about the league game, so why beat it into their heads right now? Let's Monday and Tuesday, we would tell the kids, we're going to get ready for St. V. Now, coming Wednesday, we need to concentrate on the Friday night game. And it's got to be, and you're going to have a test on Thursday on the Friday night game. And then come back in on Saturday morning. And now the other thing that we incorporated there, which I see some teams doing in the area now, and it was mostly because, number one, my boys were getting older and my son was playing at Lexington. And number two, by playing an afternoon game on Saturday, we got to go scout Saturday night.
Yep.
So we would scout. We would, if we were playing home, and we were playing whoever, Lima Senior, I'd call them and say, "Listen, do you guys want to play a 1:00 game?" And they'd think about it and they say, "Yeah, let's try it." And then everybody loved it when they did it. Now, it didn't affect our fans. I mean, if when I was at senior high, if we played a non-league game against nobody showed up anyway. But if we were playing a non-league game against Warren Harding, we got a good crowd. It didn't matter if we played at 9 in the morning or at 7 at night. So let's play it at 1:00 in the afternoon. I also liked it because, my wife still doesn't understand this, and I don't think most people do, but it's not like you can turn the switch off when a game's over, win or lose.
Yep.
I don't care if you win. It's not like you can just say, the game's over at 10. Boy, I hope to be in bed by 10:30. That's just not going to happen.
It doesn't happen.
That gave me a lot more time to
try to put it behind
you. Exactly.
And the reason I asked that Friday thing, and you brought that up, and I don't know when it was, I was talking to Bob Haas, and somehow that came up, and that's exactly what he said he would do.
That might be where I got it.
Is that he would use Monday and Tuesday to whatever shell drill stuff,
right?
Defensive, this is what we're going to do. But then when it came Wednesday, Thursday, that focus had to be on that game,
right?
On Friday. So my final question is: after you retired, you went to Ashland and you helped John Ellenwood.
Oh, you know John. What a great guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So you've kind of been exposed to the shot clock.
Love it.
Okay, that was going to be my question. How do you feel about the shot clock coming into high school basketball?
We need it, I think. But I thought we needed it before too many teams holding the ball, I think, and being so patient to the extent of they run a set for their star player. If that star player doesn't get a shot, they pull it out, run another set for that star player, pull it out, run a different set for that star. And I, it's like, well, I remember Jeff Hepner went to Ohio University, and they did have a shot clock, but Jeff, his freshman year, started for Ohio University, and they had I believe it was the Jamison brothers, were very good scorers. And Jeff said, we have 4 or 5 sets where I'm not allowed to see the ball. If the ball's over here, I got a screen over there, and vice versa. And it's like, oh, gee, at the end of the shot clock, what happens if you're open?
This was interesting. I have a nephew that coaches at Pettysville, small school in Northwest Ohio, and he has a player that's at Ohio Northern and is getting to play quite a bit as a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had this discussion in the fall, and he said his player came back and goes, man, coach, he goes, I love the shot clock. I wish it'd be in high school. And he goes, and it wasn't for offensive stuff. he goes, he loved it for defense because he was like, we know we got to play defense for whatever it is, 30, 35 seconds, and that's what we have to do. So
well, and you look, when I was up at Ashland, all of John's defensive drills, all the breakdowns, you played defense, whether it was keeping the ball from the lane, keeping the ball on the right side. It was for a certain amount of time of 15 seconds or something like that. And you watch, if you give just a token pressure, it's not to steal the ball, it's just to take some time off that shot clock. And I don't know, are you, I know it'd be logistically, it'd be tough.
I mean, somewhat initially, but kind of after kind of listening to coaches, I think it's eventually going to get here within the next 3 to 5 years. But I think it could be good for high school basketball. I mean, I think it would. I mean, people have said it's going to take, it would take away a team's ability to, let's say, we're playing St. V and we were up by, that we're going to hold it. But I've heard it on the other standpoint too, is you have really good teams that if they're not playing real well, they'll get up 6 and they'll hold it against a really bad team. And,
well, remember back in the day before the shot clock in college, remember Dean Smith putting in 4 corners, and his philosophy was if we're up by more points than time on the clock, we're going to hold the ball. So that means a 10-point lead with 9 minutes to go.
Phil Ford.
Phil Ford was the it's like, well, geez, that's not much fun to watch. But
well, I do need to tell one story, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but if you remember, there was a year or 2 years where you guys at senior high were really good, we were really good, and Willard was really good. And so in the fall, we had open gym, and we rotated between Ontario, senior high, Willard, and I think we went to it was over 6 weeks, we went to everybody's place twice. Mm-hmm. So we had a really good team, and the next year I remember you called and you go, hey, you still want to do the open gym thing? And I said, I'm not really sure. I said, because most of my guys are playing football, and I said, we're not going to be really good. You were like, oh no, that'll be fine. So you guys came out to our place, and you just throttled us.
Yeah.
and Mike Ham was my
That's part of my wins, by the way.
Mike Ham was my assistant at that time. And I forget, you left the gym, and I go, Gregg, we're not having open gym with them again. They're not coming back. And you didn't.
Well, we were never short of talent. I think that might have been the same year that when you guys
was like when Dials or Langhurst was playing at Willard.
Right. Willard was coming over to our place, and you were coming over for an open gym, and Greg Nossman walks in the gym, and we have you remember the basket protector for rebounding drills?
Yeah.
We had it was on the basket. This is at the old gym.
Yep.
And Greg looks at it and goes, what, rebounding drills in the fall? I said, no. I said, we have lunchtime up here. This is to keep the kids off the main hoop of grabbing the rim. They can grab the other ones, but they can't grab. But he thought we were having practice in fall, rebounding drills.
Well, I really appreciate you coming in. I think this has been great, and of course would again like to congratulate you on being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And for any viewers out there that would like to attend, the induction ceremony is on Saturday, April the 27th. It's at 6 p.m. at the Marriott Inn on the Olentangy Road in Columbus. And if you would like to get tickets, anybody can come. Tickets are going to be available. You can contact a gentleman named Paul Wayne, who's our Hall of Fame director. His phone number is 419-261-2547. And his email is wayno14 at embarkgmail.com. Or wayno14 at embarkmail.com. So again, Coach Collins, thanks for coming in.
Thank
Greatly
you, Joe.
appreciated. Coach Collins.
Hey, appreciate it.